Hey guys, it's Mrs. Vogel back to read a couple more chapters here of Ruby Holler, our new favorite book, right? So yesterday we read a couple chapters. We read The Doubts, and then we read Hansel and Gretel. And the doubts are where Florida and Dallas they're just not quite sure all of this. It seems a little too good to be true. And I get that. When, you've heard the old phrase, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. So that's where these kiddos are at right now. So I think it's pretty warranted. What do you think? And then Hansel and Gretel, you probably read that story when you were a little kid where Hansel and Gretel go into the forest and they go to this old woman's cottage that's kind of like a witch, and she fattens them up, and what is she going to do? And do they escape or don't they? So they're going to this two older couple's home and never met him, don't know anything about him except that really quick, brief introduction. And they have reason to be a little nervous to go on these trips with him, right? So they go into Ruby Holler, and Sary's just chattering away, and Tiller's just kind of grumbly and grumpy like. And so I think they have a good reason to be a little concerned right now. But they get to the house, and the house seems pretty awesome, especially when you've been stuck in a little home, an orphanage for a while, right? They get to see all these hills that are just absolutely gorgeous, and it looks a lot different than what they're used to. So today we're going to start out with our next chapter, chapter 9, which is called The God. Tiller was peering into the mirror beside the bed. I don't look 60 years old, do I? Well, of course you don't, Sary replied. He smoothed his hair with his hand. And I'm still relatively handsome, he asked. Of course you are. You know that lady who was down here last month to buy some of our carvings? That New York lady? Yeah, I remember. You know what she said? She said I was a god. Sary patted some Vaseline on her hands, and she blew out the candle. And you believed her, you old coot. Tiller glanced toward the window, at the leafy branch tapping against the window pane. We should send those kids back, he had thought. Sary should come with me down the river to the Rutabaga, and then I should go with her searching for that stupid bird in Kangadoon. Maybe I'll suggest that to Sary in the morning. Maybe I will. Chapter 10, The Egg. Dallas was in the cabin kitchen peering at framed photographs on the wall. They were like puzzles. Something in each picture matched something else in the next picture. And then something in that picture matched something in a whole different picture. In the first photograph, he examined the men seemed to have identical noses, long and thin, and they all stood with their arms loosely folded and their heads cocked to one side. Then in the picture next to that one, there were two plump women with that same nose standing that same way. Sometimes at school, when parents would meet their children at the end of the day, Dallas was startled to see how much some of the children looked just like their parents. He looked at a boy and his father standing together and think, so that's what that father looked like when he was little. And that's what that boy will look like when he's all grown up. How do we know who we are? He'd asked Florida. How do we know what we'll be? We're trouble twins now, and we'll be trouble twins when we get old. But what will we look like? What will we be doing? We might be big and clumsy and stupid like we are now. Or maybe we'll get some brains and we'll turn into geniuses or something. How the crawly crod should I know? Florida felt uneasy with Dallas asking all these questions. She felt as if they had no control over what they were or where they were going or what they might become. What if her mother was a big, ugly, mean person? Would you want to know that? Would you want to know that you might turn into a big, ugly, mean person like her? She wasn't big or ugly or mean. She was wispy, like a princess, and she was extremely smart, and she could do just about anything. She could paint, and she could sing like nobody you've ever heard in your life, and yeah, as if you knew. The screen door banged behind Dallas as she entered the cabin. Dallas, look here, look what I found. In her hand was an egg, pale blue with tiny black and white speckles. Little bird egg, don't you think? Dallas tapped at it. Hold it up to the light. See if you can see anything in there. Florida held it up to the window. Can't see anything except a sort of dark, blobby thing. Let's keep it, Dallas. Let's hatch it. She raced up to the loft and put it gently under her pillow. Then she lifted the pillow and she shook the egg. If I could just peek inside, she thought. She scraped one end with her fingernail. Then she cradled the egg in her hand, warming it. She squeezed it a little. Crack! Gooey stuff oozed out of the shell. I didn't mean it! A vague little memory popped into her head. She was little, maybe 3, sitting on someone's kitchen floor, smashing eggs. One by one, smash, smash, smash. All that lovely yellow goo. And there was a jar of peanut butter, too. She could see her chubby little hand spreading it into the cracks of the wooden floor. The peanut butter was smooth and dark and slid into the cracks of the floor. Slap, slap, slap. Someone slapping her arm. I didn't mean it, Florida whimpered. Someone screaming at her. Slap, slap, slap. Stinging on her arm and face. Who was that slapping person? Florida had wondered. One of those troubled grown-ups? One of those people who sent me and Dallas back as if we were clothing that didn't fit? In the cabin loft, she stared at the broken egg in her hand, and with one mighty toss, she hurled it against the wall. As the goo oozed slowly downward, she grabbed the pillow from her bed and flung it at the goo. And then she snatched the pillows from the other beds and threw them one by one against the wall. Putrid egg! The next chapter, 11, is called The Grump. Tiller still thought that Sari, and not the kid, should come with him on the river trip. But he hadn't been able to find a way to suggest that quite yet. Sari had greeted him in the morning with a kiss on the cheek. Oh, it's so nice having these kids here, don't you think? She was beaming and bustling around the cabin in a way she hadn't been in a long time. So much energy, it's contagious. Oof, Tiller grumbled. Well, what's that new? She said, removing a tray of hot biscuits from the stove. Nothing. Well, quit being Mr. Grump. See if those kids are up yet. After breakfast, you and Florida can get started fixing up on your dreamboat for that river trip. She's been feeling a bit grumpy, too. So you two ought to get along just fine. Well, he thought, maybe the kid could come help me fix the boat. And then when it's fixed, I'll tell Sari that she ought to come with me on that river. The kids can go back to Boxton. The last chapter we're going to read today is chapter 12, called Work. Tiller and Florida were in the barn. This here's the boat. It's in kind of sad shape, I admit. My father and I built it over 40 years ago. It's mostly a canoe, see, with this specially tailored back end and so's we can hook a motor to it. Tiller removed a tarp from the center of the boat. Those seats need redoing and that trim and there's a couple of leaks and it needs a fair amount of sanding and varnishing. Wait a minute. So I've got to rebuild this boat we're going down the river in? We're gonna fix up this rickety heap. You and me. How many hundred years is it gonna take us to fix thing? I never rebuilt a boat before. Well, I have, and it won't take years or even months. We're gonna do it in 2 weeks. 2 weeks? Are you in control of your brains? Oh, I get it. I've got to be out here day and night hammering and sawing. So, she thought, this is the yup part. That settles it. We're getting on that night train tonight. You only have to work when you want. You get tired or bored, you stop. How much do you think you should get per hour? How much what? How much water? Earnings. How much money per hour? You mean to tell me you're going to pay me to work? Like, in money? Seems only fitting. How much an hour? Florida looked at the old man, up and down. He was dressed in worn overalls. His boots were scuffed, and the shoelaces broken and knotted. 50 cents? She said. 50 cents? An hour? Well, shoot, I don't know. 10 cents a nickel? Tiller glanced toward Sari and Dallas on the porch. Sarah thinks maybe $5 would be about right. An hour? You mean like you give me $5 for every hour I worked? Is that what you're saying? That is what I'm saying. Well, squeeze my brains. I'll be out here day and night. I won't even stop to eat. $5 an hour? She couldn't wait to tell Dallas. And one afternoon, she'd have enough money to get the two of them and hop on that night train and go get out of town. Sari spread books across the porch table and handed Dallas a pencil and a pad of paper. Okay, honey, we're going to start our lists. We're going to need some equipment for our trip to Kangadoon. Well, what sort of equipment? Well, it says here we're going to need backpacks and binoculars. Where do you get stuff like that? The Salvation Army? Sari leaned forward. I was sort of hankering for some new stuff. You mean like you go in a store and you buy it like new? Nobody's used it before? Well, that is what I mean. Does that sound too extravagant? You're talking like brand new stuff for both of us? That's right. New stuff. Dallas couldn't believe it. He had never had anything new before. Well, maybe once when he and Florida were little, they'd been sent to the Hoppers who gave them new toys, but when the twins were sent back to the home, the Hoppers kept the toys. He tried to imagine new stuff, shiny and clean, with that new stuff smell. He could almost see in his hands new binoculars, and he could see himself up in a tree, scanning the horizon. Wow, so quite a bit happened today. First of all, this whole too good to be true thing, I'm curious, is it too good to be true? Do you think that this is all going to happen? Do you think they're really going to go on these trips with this new stuff? And $5 an hour, y'all, that's a lot of money, especially for two kids that have never had anything that really was their own in their whole entire life, right? Question, why do you think Florida reacted the way she did with that egg? What in the story told you that? Were there some clues that made you feel that way? And as far as wondering what your parents might look like, that's something I think we take for granted a lot of the times, don't you? I mean, we see our parents on a daily basis, most of us anyway, and then you've got these two kiddos that have never ever met their parents. It's kind of a strange thought, isn't it? And last but not least, we've got Tiller. Who does he remind you of in this story? Anybody else? And how about Sari? Does she remind you of anybody in this story? Are you thinking Dallas and Florida, perhaps? What were those similarities? But how are they also different? Till next time, guys. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Bye.